These are some carrots I harvested today. And this is a show with Zay Frank.
I want to talk about sex, and I spent the morning writing something about a bee that had a bird fetish, and I think it's terrible. And I'm frustrated in myself that that's how I instinctively want to talk about sex in cutesy words and cutesy stories. But I want to talk about it because I don't feel like I had enough information when I was young about sex, and in some ways I don't really feel like I have enough information now. When I was young, I felt like it was just something that I was supposed to do, and if I couldn't find somebody that would do it with me, there was something wrong with me somehow. I didn't have that many people to talk to about sex when I was younger. A lot of my friends talked about it in terms of conquest, and I didn't feel comfortable asking them a lot of the questions that I had. I wish I had had people to talk to. A lot of my early sexual experiences were bumbling, anxiety-filled, alienating, and I think it would have helped. And I guess I think that's the important part, talking about it, trying to get your information from people you care about or care about you, instead of trying to look for it on the internet. Here's one thing that I do believe in. Pornography is not a very good way to learn about sex. Because it's designed to arouse people who watch it, it's focused on the visual imagery and not the experience of the people who are involved. It's a mistake to look at these images as information about how to have sex, or what's expected of you, or what it's going to be like. Thinking about sex or talking about sex can be pretty overwhelming. It is for me. There's a lot of different components to sex, and sometimes it's a good idea to break it down, break them into components, and ask questions about each one. For example, here's 4 components. You can probably think of some others, but these are helpful for me. 1, the relationship between having sex and having a baby. 2, the relationship between having sex and your health. 3, the feelings of intimacy and vulnerability that people have when they have sex. And 4, the pleasure that comes with sex. The baby part doesn't apply to everyone, but everything else does. It can be helpful to sit down and write out questions that you have in each one of those categories. And I don't care how old you are, this is a lifelong question. If you're in a situation where you might have sex and you still have some questions related to that list, it's a good time to ask them. Yes, you may spoil the moment. But if talking about something that's important to you spoils a moment, then that moment is probably worth spoiling, and you should spoil it in a spectacular fashion. You can think about spoiling that moment as a way of avoiding some immensely crappy moments in the future. And if you're with somebody that listens to you and cares about how you think and feel, trust me, there will be other moments. Now, if you ignored that last step and you find yourself in a situation where you are having sex and you start to feel uncomfortable or you start to feel like you have some questions, it's a great time to stop and start talking. People have a lot of different ideas about what sex is. For example, you might consider oral sex, sex, and some other people might not. It's a good idea to know as much as you can about the other person's ideas about what you're about to do when it comes to health, when it comes to intimacy, when it comes to the expectations of your relationship. If you're thinking about having sex with someone, and this applies even if you're waiting until you get married, why not have a question night? A night where you get to ask each other all the different questions that you have. I think this can be pretty intimate and doesn't have to spoil anything. So what kind of questions would you ask? Here's a few. Are we planning on having a baby? And if not, what kind of protection are we using to make sure that doesn't happen? If we do end up having a baby, are we prepared for that? And what sort of expectations do we have of each other in the relationship? Another might be, have you had sex with other people? And if so, have you been tested for sexually transmitted diseases? If the answer is yes, what were the results of those tests? And what did you do about it? Are you willing to tell me what makes you comfortable and uncomfortable? And are you committed to being honest with me? And can we commit to having this conversation often? If you get past the health parts, you can start asking questions about vulnerability, intimacy, and pleasure. Questions like, does having sex make you feel closer to me? Or does it make you feel something else? And are you comfortable talking about the things that give you pleasure? And if not, why? I guess the only real point I have here is ask a lot of questions. Sex is a really big part of human life, and I think it should be treated that way, as important.
Bye bye, it's the bye bye song. Bye bye, it's the bye bye song.